This is part 12 of my testimony. Where we left off, it wasn't such a happy part. And as I realized, as I was looking over the video again, I realized that I was really upset in that video. I was extremely upset, and just reliving all of that stuff about how the demonic realm pretty much took over my house and made me feel unsafe in my house, made me afraid to leave my dogs alone anywhere, made me, I was really frightened. My mother came over and prayed for the house, and, she tried, but I don't know, it just wasn't, nothing really worked. I mean, it would ebb and flow. Sometimes it would be worse than others, especially if I was feeling really unwell. If I was sick, like really sick, then it seemed like it would just get worse. If I was afraid about something else, it would get worse. If I was stressed out about something else, it would get worse. It was just something that we kind of put up with for years until, and here's the good part of the story. This is the good part of the story. Well, it's not a good part, actually. This is a very sad and horrible, devastating part of the story, because my mother passed away, and she was my best friend, and we saw each other every day, and we talked to each other on the phone, even when she would go home, because she only lived 5 minutes away, and we were very close. So when my mother died of cancer, it was a devastating time in my life. But here was a bright part. I became a lot closer to my mother's niece, she lives in Texas, and we started to draw closer together. And she helped me so much while my mother was sick, and she was a born again believer. And anyway, so after my mother passed away, she and her sister and her mom came and stayed with us in the house to come and help, which was just so lovely of them. So my mother's niece, we're going to call her Jolene, just for the sake of the video. She stays up on the 3rd floor where I have my office, and there's a bed up there. It's not like a real guest room. It's more like a makeshift office with a bed in it. And then I have on the 2nd floor, I have a guest room, which is where her sister and her mother stayed. But Jolene was on the 3rd floor. Hold on, my clock. So, in the morning, this was the morning of the memorial, I believe. Jolene, my mother's niece, my first cousin, comes downstairs, and she comes down, and I said, "How did you sleep last night?" And she said, "Well, I'll tell you." She says, "You've got some bad juju up there." And she's saying it in her Texas accent, which is just adorable. Anyway, she's like, "You got some bad juju up there. Oh, I had to cast it out. I'm not having that. I'm not having that. I cast it out in Jesus' name." She's like, "You've got authority over demons. You don't have to put up with that." She's like, "They're not ghosts. I hope you know they're not ghosts up there." And I was like, "Oh, I know they're not ghosts. Thank you." And I thanked her, and I apologized profusely. And she's like, "Oh, they don't bother me." She's like, "They tried." She goes, "But they don't bother me. I won't let them." So we went to the memorial, and I had my mind on my mother, passing away, and all of that, and the grief of all of that for, years. but that particular incident really, really affected me, because my mother, she would pray and everything, but my mom had, I was very sick with chronic Lyme disease. My sister also had Lyme disease and did not live near us. And she, my mother had a lot going on, and she prayed, and she would put me on her prayer chains, and she was always praying, at church and stuff. But I just don't think, deliverance work is not really everyone's cup of tea or forte, right? So I think my mother prayed and she tried, but I just think God works in very, maybe not so mysterious ways, because looking back, I think that was very purposeful, that whole thing that happened. Because what it did for me was that it said, hey, look at this person who's not afraid of demons, who's telling you you have authority over demons, who is casting demons out of your house. Look at that. What's that about? So it took me a while with grieving and everything, but I asked her months later about it. I never really asked her exactly what happened. I don't think I really wanted to know, but maybe I will ask her at some point. But if she still remembers, it was about 13 years ago now. But I said, it's not that I'd never heard of that before. My mother talked to me about it, having authority over demons, but I never really saw my mom stand on that promise in a really confident way. And I really, my mom didn't really talk about demons that much. That's not something that she really talked about in the way that I was having the problem. So, I mean, that was kind of new for both of us, this sort of full on, demonic attack. So when I spoke with my cousin about it later, she said, it's all in the Bible. It's all in the Bible. And she says, you need to read it. And another thing she put into my head was that I was always relying on my mom to pray for me about everything, but I didn't have my own relationship with God. So she was the one who put that in my head. And she says, it's time for you to have your own relationship with God now. Your mom is not here. And she says, of course, I will always pray for you. She goes, you've got that. I'll always pray for you. But you have to develop your own relationship with God. And then that got me starting to think too. I was thinking, well, yeah, what is my relationship with God? It was always through a proxy, through my mother. My mom was the conduit to God. My mother was so good and she was so close to God, and I was just this loser, over here playing with tarot cards. So I was not on her level at all, and I guess I just didn't. I didn't really see myself as someone who could have a relationship with God. I don't know why. How bizarre. But anyway, that was not true. I don't know what that was. But anyway, I started reading the Bible, and whoa, that really started me on a journey that was mind-blowing, as I've already said, to me. And there's a lot more that came from that. And I'll get into that in the next testimony, I think, because I'm running out of room. But, okay, well, love you guys. I'll come back soon.